Now, as the World Bank withdraws some of Uganda's aid, other countries like Denmark and Norway have followed suit. But just how important is that aid to the people of Uganda? CCTV's Rachelle Akuffo spoke with Peter Pham, director of the Africa Center at the Atlantic Council, to find out.
Well, Uganda, although it has certainly a great dynamism, a lot of the governmental budget is heavily dependent upon foreign assistance, not only for the military programs, development assistance, humanitarian programs. So there are a great variety of programs across all sectors that benefit from foreign assistance, whether it be bilateral or multilateral.
Now, Ugandan officials have said the West can keep its aid. So what's the incentive for them to keep giving that aid to Uganda?
Well, part of it is good policy. In fact, many countries have a difficulty with aid. Most of the aid programs going to Uganda benefit really vulnerable populations, women, children, those facing humanitarian challenges. And so those aren't likely to be cut by donor countries because they know who the benefits. So really what's going to be cut are programs at the margins, direct assistance to the government budget, in some cases, favorable concessionary loans, and then, of course, the big ticket item, which interestingly no one is talking about on the governmental level because it's so sensitive, the assistance which the Ugandan military has received in the hundreds of millions of dollars in recent years.
Do you see this becoming a trend, countries giving aid but then adding on these caveats?
Well, I think one has to look at it two ways. Certainly, every country in the world that engages in assistance, except for the most basic humanitarian assistance to someone who's on the edge of famine, someone who's faced a disaster. Most aid, aside from those, is given with conditions. Whether those conditions be explicit or implicit, countries act in their self-interest. Secondly, in the case of the anti-gay legislation, which Uganda has passed, this actually has a direct impact on the efficacy of aid programs because the legislation can be interpreted to make it very difficult to operate in the public health sector. And if the public health sector is undermined, treading water at best, if not working against yourself in a number of other aid programs. So in many respects, if you can't have good public health, you might as some of the other programs fall by the wayside as well. So it's not just a conditionality, but it's a question of efficacy of aid.
Traditionally, the World Bank has avoided stepping into political situations. Why are they changing that now, and are they overstepping?
Well, I think the World Bank is doing it for two reasons. One is that when you undermine public health, you undermine basic freedoms, you also undermine some of the underpinnings that are required for any aid to be effective. So in that you can say that this is a less ideal case for aid, or it will not be used well. Secondly, the World Bank and other multilateral institutions rely on contributions and buy-ins from nation states in order to have their liquidity, to have the funds to do what they want. And if these things become controversial, certainly taxpayers in many democracies will question giving money to a country that passes legislation like this, and that will affect the bottom line of these multilateral financial institutions. So they're also acting in their self-interest.
Could we see the World Bank stepping in on other non-economic issues?
Well, I think the World Bank will primarily focus on economics, but there are a variety of non-economic issues that are maybe not apparently economic, but which undermine the effectiveness of economic packages. For example, a country may have bad rule of law. Well, that's going to affect investor confidence, flows of foreign direct investment, and so it becomes a less attractive case, not for an economic reason, but for a legal reason that undermines the efficacy of the economic package. So I think one has to look at development and aid really holistically. It's a combination of the economic, but also the political, legal, and cultural frameworks. And you undermine one of those pillars, and the rest really begin to shake.
That was Peter Pham, director of the Africa Center at the Atlantic Council.